Hello, everyone. We are going to do another chapter from Roald Dahl's The BFG. So today we're just going to do one, and it's called The Blood Bottler. I wonder what a blood bottler is. Let's read and find out. Suddenly, a tremendous thumping noise came from outside the cave entrance, and a voice like thunder shouted, "Runt! Is you there, Runt? I is hearing you jabbering. Who is you jabbering to, Runt?" "Look out!" cried the BFG. "It's the blood bottler." But before he had finished speaking, the stone was rolled aside, and a 50-foot giant, more than twice as tall and wide as the BFG, came striding into the cave. He was naked, except for a dirty little piece of cloth around his bottom. Sophie was on the tabletop. The enormous, partly eaten snozzcumber was lying near her. She ducked behind it. The creature came clumbering into the cave and stood towering over the BFG. "Who was you jabbering to in here just now?" he boomed. "I is jabbering to myself," the BFG answered. "Piffle fizz!" shouted the blood bottler. "Bug swallow!" he boomed. "You is talking to a human being. That is what I is thinking." "No, no!" cried the BFG. "Yes, yes!" boomed the blood bottler. "I is guessing you has snitched away a human being and brought it back to this bunghole as a pet. So now I is winkling it out and guzzling it as extra snack for my supper." Oh, the other giant wants to eat Sophie. Uh-oh. Here's an illustration. There's the blood bottler, and there's the BFG. Oh, no. The poor BFG was nervous. There's no one in here, he stammered. "Why don't you leave me alone?" The blood bottler pointed a finger as large as a tree trunk at the BFG. "Runty little scumscrewer," he shouted. "Piffling little swishfiggler, squimpy little bottlewort, bronty little pogswiggle. I is now going to search the primroses." He grabbed the BFG by the arm. "And you is going to help me do it. Us together is going to winkle out this tasteful little human being," he shouted. The BFG had intended to whisk Sophie off the table as soon as he got the chance and hide her behind his back. But now there was no hope for doing this. Sophie peered around and chewed off the end of the enormous noscumber, watching the two giants as they moved away down the cave. The blood bottler was a gruesome sight. His skin was reddish pink. There was black hair sprouting on his chest and arms and on his stomach. The hair on his head was long and dark and tangled. His foul face was round and squashy looking. His eyes were tiny black holes. The nose was small, but the mouth was huge. It spread right across his face, almost ear to ear. And it had lips that were like two gigantic purple frankenfurters lying one on top of the other. Craggy yellow teeth stuck out between the two purple frankenfurter lips, and rivers of spit ran down his chin. It was not in the least difficult to believe that this ghastly brute ate men, women, and children every night. The blood bottler, still holding the BFG by the arm, was examining the rows of bottles. "You and your pibbling bottles," he shouted. "What is you putting in them?" "Nothing that would interest you," the BFG answered. You is only interested in gobbling human beings. And you is dotty as a dog waggler," cried the boom bottler. Soon the blood bottler would be coming back, Sophie told herself, and he was bound to search the tabletop. But she couldn't possibly jump off the table. It was 12 feet high. She'd break a leg. The snozzcumber although it was as thick as a perambulator, was not going to hide her in the blood bottler's pick if the blood bottler picked it up. She examined the chewed off end. It had large seeds in the middle, each one as big as a melon. They were embedded with soft, slimy stuff. Taking care to stay out of sight, Sophie reached forward and scooped away half a dozen of these seeds and left a hole in the middle of the snozcumber large enough for her to crouch in so long as she rolled herself up into a ball. She crawled into it. It was a wet and slimy hiding place. But what did that matter if it was going to save her from being eaten? The blood bottler and the BFG were coming back towards the table now. The BFG was nearly fainting with fear. Any moment he was telling himself Sophie would be discovered and eaten. Suddenly, the blood bottler grabbed the half-eaten snozcumber. The BFG stared at the bare table. Sophie, where is you? He thought desperately. You cannot possibly be jumping off the high table. So where is you hiding, Sophie? So this is the filthy, rotten glubbage you is eating, boomed the blood bottler, holding up a partly eaten snozcumber. You must be cockles to be guzzling such rub squash. For a moment, the blood bottler seemed to have forgotten about the search for Sophie. The BFG decided to lead him further off the track. That is a scrumdiddlyumptious snozcumber, he said. I is guzzling it gleefully every night and day. Is you never trying a snozcumber, blood bottler? Human beans is juicier, the blood bottler said. You is talking Ronnie tot, the BFG said, growing braver by the second. He was thinking that if he only could get the blood bottler to take one bite of this repulsive vegetable, the sheer foulness of its flavor would send him bellowing out of the cave. I is happy to let you sample it, the BFG went on. Please, when you see how truly grumptious it is, do not be guzzling the whole thing. Leave it me a little snitch for my supper. The blood bottler stared suspiciously at the small piggy eyes, with his small piggy eyes at the snozcumber. Sophie, crouching inside and chewed off the end, began to tremble all over. Oh, that's right. Sophie's inside the snozcumber, and the BFG told the blood bottler to take a bite of it. Oh my goodness. You is not switch fiddling me, is you? Said the blood bottler. Never, cried the BFG passionately. Take a bite, and I am positive you will be shouting out, oh, how scrumdiddlyumptious this wonder veg is. The BFG could see the greedy blood bottler's mouth beginning to water more than ever at the prospect of extra food. Vegetables is very good for you, he went on. It is not healthsome always just be eating meaty things. This is what, said the blood bottler. I is going to taste this rotsome eats for you. But I is warning you that if it is filsome, I is smashing it over your sludgy little head. He picked up the snozcumber. He began raising it on its long journey to his mouth, some 50 feet in the air. Sophie wanted to scream, "Don't!" But that would have been an even more certain death. Crouching among the slimy seeds, she felt herself being lifted up, up, and up. Suddenly, there was a crunch as the blood bottler bit a huge hunk off the end. Sophie saw his yellow teeth clamping together a few inches from her head. Then there was utter darkness. She was in his mouth. She caught a whiff of his evil-smelling breath. It stank of bad meat. She waited for the teeth to go crunch once more. She prayed that she would get killed quickly. Roared the blood bottler. And he spat. All of the great lumps of snozcumber that were in his mouth, as well as Sophie herself, went shooting across the cave. If Sophie had struck the stony wall of the cave, she would most certainly have been killed. Instead, she hit a soft fold of the BFG's black coat hanging against the wall. She dropped to the ground, half stunned. She crawled under the hem of the cloak, and there she crouched. "You little swine bugler!" roared the blood butler. "You little pig swiller!" He rushed at the BFG, smashed what was left of the schnauzcumber over his head. Fragments of the filthy vegetable splashed all over the cave. "You is not loving it?" the BFG asked innocently, rubbing his head. "Loving it?" yelled the blood butler. "That is the most disgustuous taste that I is ever touching my teeth. You must be bugless to be swalloping sludge like that. Every night you could be galloping off happy as a hamburger and gobbling juicy human beings." "Eating human beings is wrong and evil," the BFG said. "It is guzzly and glumptuous," shouted the blood butler. "And tonight I is galloping off to Chile to swabble a few human chili beans. Is you wishing to know why I is choosing Chile?" "I is not wishing to know anything," the BFG said, very dignified. "I is choosing Chile," the blood butler said, "because I is fed up with the taste of Eskimos. It is important I has plenty of cold eats in the scuttling hot weather, and the next coldest thing to Eskimos is a chili bean. Human beans from Chile is very chilly." "Horrible," the BFG said. "You ought to be ashamed. Other giants is saying they is wanting to gallop off to England tonight to guzzle school children." Bud Butler said, "I is very fond indeed of English school childers. They is a nice inky booky flavor. Perhaps I will change my mind and go to England with them." "You is disgusting," the BFG said. "And you is an insult to giant peoples," shouted the Bud Butler. "You is not fit to be a giant. You is a squeaky little squiddler. You is a pibbling little pipsqueak. You is a cream puffet." With that, the horrible Bud Butler giant strode out of the cave. The BFG ran to the cave entrance and quickly rolled the stone back to place. "Sophie," he whispered. "Sophie, where is you, Sophie?" Sophie emerged from under the hem of the black cloak. "Here I am," she said. The BFG picked her up and held her tenderly in the palm of his hands. "Oh, I is so happy to be finding you all in one lump," he said. "I was in his mouth," Sophie said. "You was what?" cried the BFG. And there I was telling him to eat the filsome schnauzcumber, and you was all the time inside it," the BFG cried. "Not much fun," Sophie said. "Just look at you, poor little childler," cried the BFG. "You was all covered in schnauzcumber and giant spit." He set about cleaning her up the best he could. "I is hating those other giants more than ever now," he said. "You know what I should like?" "What?" Sophie said. "I should like to find a way to disappear them, every single one." "I'd be glad to help you," Sophie said. "Let me see if I can think of a way of doing it." And there's another illustration. You can see the BFG and Sophie. Looks like Sophie's covered in that giant spit and schnauzcumber. Maybe the BFG is helping her clean it off. All right, that's our chapter for this read aloud. Next, we're going to read this chapter. Frobs, Scobbles, and Whiz Poppers. I wonder what those are. This book has so many fun, imaginary, and very creative things in it. I'm excited to read this one next. Bye!